So it is my honor to introduce your keynote speaker today, Pascale Sablan. Please join me in welcoming her. So Pascale is the 315th licensed Black female architect. She is also an activist. She has a litany of awards. I think I would just like fill up the whole thing. But most recently, she was named the 2021 Whitney M. Jr. Award, or did I say that Whitney M. Young Award, which is given to architects who are doing awesome, great social work in their fields. So please join me in welcoming Pascale, and Pascale, let's take it from here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's the Whitney M. Young Jr. Award, which is really focused on advocacy. I'm very proud for that award because it also came with the elevation to the College of Fellows, which is always super exciting. And so I found out that I'm the youngest African-American to ever receive that honor. So I'm really excited about that. Really excited to meet with you all today and engage this community, and want to applaud all the organizers and leaders who've been really putting all this together. And this is a powerful and important platform, so I really appreciate being a part of it. So as it was mentioned, my name is Pascale Sablan. I'm the founder and executive director of Beyond the Built Environment. I'm also an associate at Adjaye in New York. I am the NOMA National Historian and the NOMA National President-elect, the 5th woman ever to hold that position in the organization's 50-year legacy. I'm also AIA New York Board of Director and AIA National Strategic Planning Committee member who helped write the strategic plan that the membership and the organization needs to follow for the next 5 years. And I hold all these various hats and responsibilities because it allows me to do a few things. One, helps me be informed truly of what the issues are, the infrastructures that are supporting those issues, and give an insight and a strategy and a team who really wants to start dismantling it. But my favorite part about being part of all these organizations, aside from the position of power to push for policy and changes, is also to engage communities, to engage society through these various programs and initiatives that are geared towards really showing up and being there as a resource for the greater community. And one of my favorite programs and initiatives is Project Pipeline, which is a NOMA national initiative where we get to meet elementary school kids, teach them about architecture, explore their neighborhood, have them design a project that they would want to see in their community, and present it to each other and to their family members. And as these kids are skipping out the door, really excited and now introduced to the profession, I often wondered what would happen, or what happens when they try to further their research about us. So if I'm going to research anything, the first thing I do is I Google it, right? As my computer is spinning. So when you Google the word great architects, Google banner comes up with 40, 50 names and faces. So here on your screen is the first 40, 4 rows of 10. And in this list, how many do you think are women? That's right, just 1. And if you look at the span of this list, it's really from contemporary, currently practicing architects all the way down to Raphael and Michelangelo. So this is a very large breadth of time. Okay, how many do you think are African-American? 0, but we have 9 minorities. Zaha is important. She holds it down in 2 categories. And basically it's saying between now and to when Architects from Ninja Turtles, there has been only 1 woman who've done significant work and 0 African-Americans. And that simply is not true. So here's a powerful print screen moment, if you will, where you can see the names of 40 incredible African-American and Black diverse architects and designers who've impacted and changed our world that we weren't aware of. So kind of thinking about that, I went to Google's headquarters and said, hey, why is this the output when I type in these words? And they said, Pascal, frankly, there's just not enough content out there that lists you all as great. And that really, really resonated and echoed within me to see what does that mean potentially. I then listened to Dr. Adelaide Sanford's In Afrocentric Education as a Human Rights speech, where she introduced me to a very important character, Albert Shanker. Albert Shanker was the president of the Federation of Teachers from 1964 to 1997. He pretty much controlled our public school systems in his capacity across the US. And this is a person that's very heralded and very respected because he really fought for equity in our education system so that no matter where you were in the country, your public school education was comparable with one another. He also fought for teachers and other components. But part of his mantra, or part of his thinking about ways of making school equitable was never let the African American child learn of his or her history, because if they do, they relate more to their ethnicity and they will not become an American. So her point, and what I tend to agree with, is that our education has really not really focused in on elevating us and our identities, and part of that equity comes at the cost of erasing our culture. And so the way I've set up this presentation is the black and white slides, such as these, kind of sets up the issue. The yellow slides talk about what I specifically have been doing to try to address the issue. And then the cyan pages, my favorite color, speaks to what I'm continuing to further aspire to do. And the reason why I include that is because you don't always have to wait until you've accomplished something to share it. It's really important that you engage your community, right, in your aspirations and in your dreams, because you never know who is really to support you, who is at a position to really propel those ideas forward. So the first thing I did was curate a Say It Loud New York exhibition in January of 2017. The concept was to see our faces, hear our voices, feel our impact within the colorful tapestry of our heritage. The exhibition was bright, vibrant, loud, if you will. To see our faces, next to each label, I had headshots. To hear our voices, I had video testimonials playing on either side of the gallery that spoke to our experiences. And then feel our impact really is through our work. And that's how we really want you to see us and assess us and think about us ultimately. So Say It Loud was then invited by the United Nations to have an exhibition at their campus. They didn't let me be as bright and as vibrant, but I think extra loud was really definitely achieved, where we were able to elevate the contributions and identities of these amazing designers on a global scale to world leaders. And they also gave me the power of a podium in terms of being able to speak to, not just thanking them for allowing for this exhibition to happen, but speaking to what my aspirations was, which was to make this a national movement. And also in A18 conference in June of 2018, when they had it in New York, it was literally 1 block away from my office. And I had submitted a series of panel discussions and exhibitions focused on our experiences, and they were denied and declined, and was stated, Pascal simply put, we think the information is too bespoke to one community. We want it to be much more inclusive, so more people are, encouraged to come participate and attend. Fair, but disappointing. So I took and leveraged the fact that my office was 1 block away, asked them if I could take over the space and the gallery for a few days. They said, absolutely. I went and called United Nations and said, hey, are you guys done with those boards and the model? I'd love to use it for something. They said, absolutely. I also asked AIA, can you put the exhibition on your app so that people actually knew that it's there and they can come see it? And they said, absolutely. So I was actually able to host those 2 panel discussions and my exhibition and leverage my network with NICOBA and AIA in New York and so on and so forth to really spread the word, and got hundreds of people to be able to come over and participate in those panels and the exhibition. And then the United Nations showed up, right? They said to me, Pascal, I'm not gonna make it a national movement, we're gonna make it an international movement. And on March 25th, 2019 was Say It Loud Day, where they had translated our exhibition into 8 languages, which is what you see in the center of your screen, and invited professors and students from all over the world to come and see the incredible work and inspire them. And so this is a moment for me where I said, I can't keep having exhibitions that are elevating the same 22 people from the New York exhibition. It's time to make this a traveling activation where every time we had a new Say It Loud, I was elevating the contributions and identities of those of that community. And so we also had Say It Loud exhibitions at conferences as well, such as AIA, NOMA, and South by Southwest, as another way of kind of really allowing for more people and visibility of the great work that we're doing. And as you can see, the headshots are super big. So even from across the room, you see our faces and adjacencies to our work. And then also what we tried to do is have exhibitions that showcase like what happened from the year prior, right? So just taking a pause to talk about A19 to say, look who got invited to the party the next year, got a prominent location, lots of wall space, and the president of AIA, William Bates, made it a point to come over and say it loud as well. So just because I took that no and I squeezed it into a yes, it provided me opportunities moving forward with the organizations. I also leveraged these requests for public speaking, saying, hey, if you want me to come and speak about advocacy, are you interested in allowing for our exhibition to be up and elevate some of those local talents of your community? And so this was a really powerful moment where I was able to do that in Virginia last year as part of the Architecture Exchange East program, while I keynoted in front of 750 people, was able to elevate the identities and contributions of women and BIPOC designers of Virginia. Also in November of 2019 was Say It Loud, Pennsylvania. And for this one, somebody said to me, Pascal, if the whole mission behind all of this was to inspire the little kids for your Project Pipeline camps, how are they supposed to see all these Say It Louds at the Center for Architecture, at the United Nations, at South by Southwest, at these conferences? It seems a bit out of reach for the society or the community. And it was like the best feedback I ever could have gotten, because they were absolutely right. And so I brought that kind of conundrum to NOMA PGH, which was organizing with me to do the Say It Loud Pennsylvania. And so what they did is they picked a venue and a gallery that was a community gallery. They programmed it like you wouldn't believe: keynote speeches, panel discussions, networking events, youth days. Literally every other day I was getting an alert of a different program of different people that was engaging in the exhibition. So they really set the metric, the bar, and the way that we engaged Say It Louds moving forward. And an example of that was Say It Loud Illinois, also in November of 2019, with the Community Builders Group, where we actually hosted the exhibition at a community center space. And so versus a venue or a gallery, these are the spaces that communities would rent out for parties and so on and so forth. We were kind of worried that it was so bold that they would be kind of mad that they rented out the space and this really large graphic was behind them. But it was so well received that it was something that was requested to stay up for additional months longer than it was actually entailed or intended to be. Say It Loud Georgia was actually our very first school of architecture to give me the yes to elevate women and people of color. I'm not sure.
Say It Loud Georgia.
Not sure why that is such a hard request, but apparently it is. So shout out to Georgia Tech for being the first yes in this mission. One of my favorite parts about this exhibition was really being able to elevate the contributions and identities of William Stanley III and his wife, Ivanhoe Love Stanley, who had designed and built part of their campus. So really being able to showcase their heroes and their legends within them and equating them with their built environment was really powerful and important as well. Then we had Say It Loud United Kingdom, which happened in London in February of 2020. Again, it was interesting because here in the US, you guys kind of know me, you've heard about me. In the UK, they're like, who are you? So I really had to partner up with a lot of organizations like Royal Institute of British Architects, Black Females in Architecture, and the Stephen Lawrence Equitable Trust Foundation, to help spread the word and pull a beautiful exhibition together, and to see that a lot of these issues that we're facing here are also plaguing society and communities all over the world. And then lastly, we had a Say It Loud Ohio. We planned this for 6 months. We had it at the Karamu Performing Arts Theater, which is the oldest African-American theater in the country. I totally thought that was the Apollo, but Apollo was whites only till 1933. We had 44 people submit for this exhibition, 32 videos. It was incredible. And then 2 hours before the exhibition was set to open, the governor got on the screen and said, yo, COVID is crazy, shut everything down, no more gatherings of large groups. So aside from the first 90 people who came to see the exhibition, no one else got to see this exhibition. And it sucked because it was at a theater center, so that when they had plays and performance, then when people came to wait, they would see the work. And when people were done with those plays, they would also be able to see it. So really the visibility was supposed to really expand and explode amongst the community. So it was really frustrating to see that it, because of COVID, it didn't kind of proceed the way we really intended it and planned for it to happen. And so to move forward with that, I curated a virtual exhibition of Ohio and had thumbnails and headshots of all those who were featured. And when you click each of them, it takes you to their profile pages where you get to see their work, their name, their aspirations, and the videos that they submitted. So really creating a virtual way for that same information to be shared, because the physical one wasn't able to be experienced the way we had originally outlined. And so what am I aspiring to do? Well, leveraging children's books as one way of kind of planting that seed nice and early. I've been working with an artist to create caricatures of our designers and 3D pop-ups of their work with the words "I can too," so that little kids can practice the words of "I can too be an architect, I can too change the world," so that they practice that self-affirmation. The other component is Legos. I haven't been searching, and I see in the background some Lego architecture series, which is super dope. But I'm gonna need some projects with women and people of color featured in this collection. Most recently, I just got connected with the regional director of Lego architecture. So I'm really hoping that this will slide to a yellow page soon, and I'll have to keep dreaming big about how we integrate us to larger society. Then we have the namesake of this lecture. I was asked to stand and that I have something to prove. And it's based off an experience that I've had when I was studying in schools of architecture. A professor asked me and another student to stand and said, okay, these two will never become architects because they're Black and because they're women. I was shocked that in my second week of schooling, a professor would make such a strong proclamation without knowing my name or my capacity. It also was surprised by the fact that these classrooms full of 60 students or so, no one said anything. And then lastly, it was not lost on me that there was only two of us that complied with that criteria in this entire room of like 60 students, which is crazy. And so that was the moment where I realized that I would never just be representing Pascal, right? Whenever I enter a space, I'm representing my gender and my race. And so therefore I have to show up and show out and really try to be the best that I can be so that I don't preclude or stop anybody else's blessings after me. But I say this to say when I did have these lectures in person, I used to ask the audience to stand if they've ever been asked or ever been told that they can't because of their gender and or race. And people are standing in schools of architecture, people are standing in professional settings, people are standing. So let's be clear, this is another layer of oppression that happens in our education system that precludes us moving through into finishing our education and entering the profession. So why was the professor so adamant about this? Well, let's think about the enrollment and demographics. So student applications have been stuck at a decade at 5%. And although 5% get enrolled, only 3% graduate. So I often wonder and worry about that missing 2%. Did they figure out that they liked sleep and basswood obsessions was not for them, which is fair? Or were they asked to stand at one capacity or another and ensure we understand what's going on there and seeing if we can actually save that attrition rate that's happening in schools? Also, the demographics of the professors. 34% are licensed, 7.6% are Hispanic, 2.5% are Black, and 32% are women. Am I saying that I can only learn from Black women? Absolutely not. That's not how my education has been set up. However, having diversity in who I'm being taught by allows me to see myself reflected, but also the diversity in the content and those who were heralded for their values and ethoses in the way that they impact the built environment is also diversified. And that's something that we really need to be strategic about adjusting and addressing. The Directory of African American Architects was started by Bradford C. Grant and Dennis Mann. This is the platform that held the profession accountable to know how we were doing in terms of those numbers. This is how I knew I was the 315th living African American woman in the US, architect in the US. And so in January of 2020, University of Cincinnati decided that this was no longer a platform that they wanted to support. And so if you typed in this website that had been up and running for decades, you got a sad, this site can't be reached, which pushed a lot of us advocates into a frenzy trying to locate and identify an organization or institution that would take over this directory, because again, we really needed it to help us keep track. And so really proud of NOMA National for stepping forward, still maintaining leadership by Bradford Grant and Dennis Mann. But now we have a website and the webpage that we are kind of running and maintaining. So if you're an African-American student, please submit, or not, excuse me, licensed professional, please submit to this directory and allow us to continue to track how we're doing in the profession. And this is another print screen moment that tells you the new web address for where you can go to do that. I also, as a NOMA historian, started the Vimeo National page, NOMA National page, that actually has 95 videos of lectures, panel discussions, testimonials, project pipeline camps that speak to our values and our ethoses in the built environment. There's lectures on there that's not about Jedi work. It's not always about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We can speak about a lot more, and that is the place to find it. We currently have 32,000 views of all of our videos. And the Smithsonian, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, actually lists our Vimeo page as an important resource in their architecture section. So please, 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 zero paywall. It's for you. It's an asset to you. Please use it and leverage it to kind of learn about more components. I've also kind of went full circle with the Young Designers Conference and went back to Pratt. and said, in a space that I was told I couldn't, let's have a conference that really tells 58 students with the help of 25 speakers that they absolutely can. Also creating relationships between college and high school students to ensure that they mentor one another and push each other forward. And then it's not just about graduating. We gotta get us jobs, get us not just jobs, but on a great pathway for our careers, where we host panel discussions with HR managers and recruiters and those who are in charge of hiring. That speaks to what they're looking for in those applications and then those packages, mock interviews and portfolio reviews to again give those tidbits that help put us in a position in a firm that not just gives us a salary, but also paths of leadership and growing in their institution. I also leverage social media for social change. Our IG page is called Beyond the Built. Every week, a different diverse designer takes it over. We have officially featured 113 designers so far since we started in December of 2018. We have 6,174 followers. If you are not following, I highly recommend. It really gives each of these designers the experience of putting themselves out there to be in control of their story and really start to elevate their contributions and diversify all the ways in which we have impacted the built environment. So if you aren't following, please follow now. And then I don't know if I mentioned it, but we've done 18 exhibitions so far with another 9 planned this year. So really pulling all the content from all the various Say It Loud exhibitions. I created this library, in April of 2019. Google said there's no content that calls us great. Great Diverse Designers Library. It is, where we sequence all the information by either alphabetical order or by location. And we currently have 425 profiles. And Say It Loud Arkansas and Say It Loud Minnesota's deadline is tomorrow. So we've been getting lots of new submissions. So there's going to be a nice jump in profiles soon. But wanted to say again, 0 paywall, please. It's for you to enjoy. And I just actually purchased the domain, Great Diverse Designer library.com, so you'll be able to kind of take you back to that library as well. I also converted all of my past physical exhibitions into virtual exhibitions in May of 2020. Didn't know that May was going to become so heavy after that, but this was really powerful. So now when you go to the website, instead of seeing just the photos of the exhibition, you actually now get the headshot and the thumbnails of all of their work. And so you can literally explore all these spaces and see the great work of women and diverse designers and ensure that you're seeing the powerful work that they have. So again, free for you to enjoy. And it basically takes you back to that Great Diverse Designers profile page. Usually with these exhibitions, I wait to be invited to come in and have these exhibitions, and which is amazing and important. But it was clear in 2019 that there's just some places in the country and in the world where I was just not invited, right? And so in 2020, activated by all that was happening, I really pushed forward and launched a few dismantling injustice initiatives. And so this is how we started. And this is how it's going. We're really representing a large portion of the US. I believe we're at 68%. And now we're also representing global work, which is really powerful and important. All again featured in that library. And the ultimate goal, why this is a cyan page, is because I'm looking to publish a book that actually pulls the best of that content into a place that can be leveraged in academia and used for education purposes. Our ancestors are our heroes and we are their legacy. So what does it take? What's holding us back? Well, according to NAB's report, it could take between 11 to 12 and a half years to become a registered architect. That's me at the bottom. I did my 5-year bachelor's degree, my 1-year master's degree. Did 3 years of IDP. I was not playing around, but man, me and those ARE exams, we did not get along. It took me 4 years to pass the 7 tests, and it took me 14 tests before I passed the 7 that was required. So for me, a person who always knew she wanted to be an architect, after I graduated high school, it took me 13 years before I could say that I'm an architect. Financially, according to NAB, it could take between $40,000 to $230,000 to become a registered architect. That's again me at the bottom. It took me $67,000. Full transparency. I thought this was a ridiculous amount of money, but y'all are graduating now with 6-figure debt. I have a 4-year-old son and he will be attending college And I'll still be paying back Sally Mae when our 30-year repayment strategy here, right? So we're asking for a long time commitment and a long financial commitment as part of that education. And when we graduate, what we're making, depending on the economy and the profession at the time, we could be making around $50,000. And other careers that have similar and comparable durations of education and investment in education are coming out making double that, right? So this is a very big ask. And again, another barrier to stopping us from kind of entering the profession. Then a lot of times I hear, Pascal, why are people of color, kids of color need to be introduced to architecture? And I'm like, pause. We don't need to be introduced. We're fully aware from architecture, but it's a negative relationship, right? We deal with the debris, we deal with the rodents, the smells, the noises, the detours, that all that comes with it, while our built environment fails to provide us the spaces that we need. And when all of that's finally cleared up and that architecture is emerged, it's rarely for that local community. Is rarely reflective of the culture of that community, and rarely within the price point of that local community to afford. So architecture really is the villain in this discussion and in the lens of many kids of color, especially those who come from socioeconomically challenged experiences and neighborhoods and families. So we need to understand that this is not a misconception, but an accurate depiction of a relationships that we've cultivated through focusing on those who are financially paying for our services, rather than focusing on all those who are impacted by our work in the built environment. Currently, there's 115,000 architects in the United States. African-American licensed architects are 2%. And I believe we are now at 502 African-American women living architects in the US. I am the 315th and the 21st African-American woman to be elevated to the College of Fellows, and the second in all of New York. Shout outs to Roberta Washington for being the first, but that's a lot. That's a lot to know. But I say all this to say we're here, we're out here, our numbers are growing. But if you're on the fence of becoming licensed, if you're struggling with those exams, please power through, please persevere. And there's lots of resources and a whole community who's cheering you on, is ready there to support you, to help you get through and get your number up there as well. I also try to be as visible to the community as possible, participate in parades. I hold organizations that I'm a part of that I pay good dues to be the best version, and protest to make sure that they really show up for me in the ways that I need them to. And I share my story. As you see, full transparency about all my cobwebs, right? I make room for our experiences, no matter how uncomfortable it makes other people. So these are my two panel discussion components that was denied for A18, and that they were able to move forward and happen nonetheless. Also have lecture series is curated with other programming institutions that allowed our heroes and our legends to be echoed for years to come to build their legacy. I protect our history. When there's a mad dash in February for Black History Month and a mad dash in March for Women's Month, and there's a slew of content that's being pushed out there without much review, I find the time to review and make sure that things are being accurately depicted. And I hold these publications accountable, and not just for yelling for the sake of yelling, although fun, really saying like, let's establish a relationship here that would allow us to move forward more united in a collaborative method that really serves our community. Also thinking about the force of erasure, and even how the way slavery is being taught, where Africans are depicted as immigrants in social studies textbooks, or that we are brought to Texas to help the fields do chores. My goodness. And my favorite is this photo at the bottom here is supposed to be a photo of slavery. Us and our Sunday best having a picnic in a wagon. So if our textbooks are not even really accurately depicting the gruesome history of our past and how the country has treated us and all the infrastructural racism and oppressions that have been built from that moment, then we as architects have a responsibility to do that and embed that into the built environment as well. So another element is that I want to emphasize, it's not just a matter of me elevating us and calling us great, right? It's also us actively fighting this force of erasure. So Architect magazine did a panel with AIA, my favorite conference, 2018, and they had a panel with 5 people. You see Justin Garrett Moore in the center stage there. And after the panel finished, they had a video put on their website that literally clipped out Justin's entire existence on this panel. None of his answers, none of his responses, not his name, nothing. The only time you saw him was actually his shadow profile when they zoomed into another speaker. And he flagged this in 2018 when this came out, and crickets. But then 2020 happened and they decided to write an article about the accidental erasure of Justin Garrett Moore. Now, anybody who's photoshopped a hair out of place in a photo knows how it is insane to say to erase a whole individual from a 1-hour video clip was a lapse in judgment and a mistake. No, that was a directive. And that same publication in 2020 had another interview with 4 people, 3 women and a Black man. And when that article went to print, again, who do you think fell off the page? That's right, the Black man. Stephen Gray, although highly regarded, great to the conversation and important content, the physical magazine forgot to include him in it, right? We're just gonna use the word forgot. So it's not just a matter of us elevating us, but also being great with blocking all this erasure that's happening as well. And so what's my ultimate goal here is to create a strong relationship with media publications to ensure that we're not being erased and that we're actually being elevated. So I launched a new initiative called Say It With Me, or Say It With Media, which is part of my dismantling injustices issues. Well, what I'm asking for those media publications to do a series of things. So I'm talking to print, digital, and broadcasting to report the percentage, right? Because you can't manage what you can't measure. The number of women and people of color that is featured in their publication annually. Commit to increasing that by 5% annually until a minimum of 15% is reached. I also pledging to call us great, right? Use the G word, as Google said. And if you don't use the G word, fine. Whatever comparable language you talk about my white male counterparts, please bring that same energy when you speak about women and people of color, because clearly you wouldn't be writing about us if you didn't think we were great, right? Also, a lot of my self-submitting kind of work is about currently practicing contemporary designers, but we've been here doing incredible work. So really leveraging their research and development teams to pull for historical content and pull that up and forward to us as well is important. And then lastly, pledge to leverage their platform to educate society about the Black experience and help show how architecture is used to facilitate racism and oppression. And also, we talk about advocacy sometimes from this idea of policy making, from position holding, but also architecture needs to advocate as well, right? And for me to talk to you about how I want architecture to explore and inspire and keep our history, I also need to kind of start the foundation with how architecture is used to oppress. So a great example is Robert Moses. Now, being as a person from New York, Robert Moses is somebody that was heralded as this amazing person who gave us Central Park and all this amazing green and outdoor space and blah, blah, blah. Didn't know that when he did Central Park, he decimated a thriving African-American community. Didn't realize that he was an avid racist. To know that he didn't like us as undesirables. And that's not just African-Americans, but that's also immigrants and a slew of people that fell under that category. So when it came to his precious Jones Beach, he wanted to make sure that us, the undesirables, did not have access. And he also understood that we used buses as our main means of transportation. Therefore, he mandated that all the overpass bridges was 9 feet or shorter to ensure that our buses couldn't get through. So that's 20 bridges that was constructed to be concrete experiences and examples of how architecture was used to facilitate racism and oppression. You have projects that have market rate and affordable income units that have a market rate entrance and affordable entrance, which is, to me, the modern day of whites only and coloreds only fountains and entrances, knowing that these developments couldn't financially even happen without having that affordable housing component as part of the development pro forma. So really think about that. There's also gentrification, there's also redlining. Literally, there's lots of ways in which architecture facilitates oppression, but hopefully now we're all in the same place. So now architecture that pushes beyond that. One of my favorites is the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. When this museum was going up, or memorial, excuse me, was going up, people were upset that we're building architecture that speaks to such a dark history. Now, first of all, we need to define what you mean by history, because as you can see, lynching is something that happens continuously, specifically George Floyd, right? Now, if you want to go specifically into the definition of lynching to hangings, then we could talk about in 2017, where an 8-year-old boy was hung by some high school students who thought it was funny. Luckily for us, those high school kids, not tying game was not the best, so it unraveled and the kid was able to fall and survive. But seeing photos of this, chocolate baby's neck with rope burns around them, and hanging him in front of his 11-year-old sister. I mean, let's not even talk about the trauma. But the same people who was very angry about this memorial, I needed y'all to bring that same energy, right, and that same outrage when this trauma and racist and lynching happens in their community. And to hear law enforcement say that they would not be bringing charges to those high school kids because they are air quote good kids was another kind of factor of burden and responsibility that we carry as a group of people, right? Another piece of architecture that really is important is the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It dates back for the request for the museum to 1915, and they were told that African Americans had not contributed significantly to society to warrant a museum on the mall. And so this museum itself is a 100-year advocacy effort. It was also designed and led by amazing, incredible, diverse architects, Phil Freelon, J. Max Bond Jr., and David Adjaye. And then the building, the museum, and its content is the testimony of our contributions to the society. And it's also where we're able to send our artifacts, right? The things that we have kept our history as important and as precious. And now we have a place that we can send it to that will keep it safe and potentially elevate it for an exhibition for society to see and learn from in the future. There's also the Center for Civil and Human Rights, also by Phil Freelon, which was one of my favorite spaces that I've ever been to. But one of my favorite parts was actually this exhibition moment where you sit at a lunch counter and experience what it would feel like to do one of those protests. And just seeing the power of architecture to translate experiences is really important to understand. Then we have the ways of embedding our heroes into our built environment. J. Max Bond Jr., really proud to be part of the team that got West 162nd Street renamed J. Max Bond Jr. Way, and really embedding our heroes in our communities, in our neighborhoods. So if you have one in your community, please start that paperwork. It took forever to start getting us integrated into the built environment as well. The first project that I ever worked on as an intern was the African Burial Ground National Monument. This is when they were excavating for yet another federal building. And through the excavation for the foundations, they started to come across African remains. Howard University did a full investigation on the site and found 419 remains, ranging from 8 months old to 60-year-olds. It was really important and powerful discovery. But one of my favorite parts about this monument is actually on the side of the chamber is a map of downtown Manhattan and the full extent of the estimated 15,000 remains in the African burial ground. And what it taught me is that all these buildings, our neighbors here, the ones across the street, and even City Hall, are literally and figuratively built on the backs and bones of our African ancestors and heroes that they dug for their excavations, saw us, and built anyway. So really, the responsibility and the importance of this monument to keep that record and make sure that society is aware and knowledgeable of what this is really important and powerful. And for that to be the very first project in my career really started to shape the way that I think about architecture. Also, I'm Haitian by background, and so when the earthquake happened in January of 2010, aside from losing a lot of family, it also activated me to try to give back to be part of the diaspora that gives back, and leverage myself as an ACE mentor to help high school kids help me reimagine and design a high school campus, elementary and high school campus for Haiti and their rebuilding strategies. I also push for environmental justice, right? So for you, I'm just saying, the justices that you seek can be gender, can be racial, can be environmental, can be anything that you're passionate about. Really, the idea is to activate all of us, start dismantling oppression wherever we see it. Proud to be part of the 888 Boylston team, the highest performing executive office building in all of New England, where we really pushed for as much sustainable passive and active strategies as possible. The Bronx Point, which is a 542 affordable housing housing project with the first ever brick and mortar hip hop museum and community facilities, retail. It has adjacent to a public park, shore public walkway, waterfront plaza, community plaza. Really a program and a project that's for the community, that embeds the culture of the community and has programs that access for the community as well, and was part of the community engagement and process within there. The concept of the project was hip hop, which is why we had fenestrations that were dancing, as well as shades of dark grays and black brick to make up the facade and exterior. And that I really love the fact that it's an affordable housing project that people can look at and be prideful of their home and the way that we've designed it for them. And then we have the Cleveland Foundation headquarters, which was literally my #1 community engagement project, where we were constantly asking, how can this project serve the community? And almost 50% of the program is actually outward facing, meaning it's programmed for the community, where all these kind of programs really start to pull people in and show that this piece of architecture was actually for them. And we had extensive community engagement to hear their voices, hear what their concerns were, understand what are the things that we can do to push to make things better, and really understand that our project's not just about our lot and our site, but how it really pulls into the larger infrastructure and vision for the entire community as well. And so my aspirations for that is to replace oppressive monuments with that of our great leaders and community spaces. And this one used to get giggles, but now not so much, because we've been really starting to identify these figures and these monuments and statues that have been heralding at the highest peak and points of these communities, people who have been fighting vehemently to maintain slavery, and starting to leverage them and reclaim those spaces, right? Where they took a podium where a racist statue once stood, and now replace them of something for a Mardi Gras. So this is in Louisiana, where they're starting to talk through their culture and elevate that as what's important. That's claiming that people are kings, right? So this is really powerful to see us reclaiming those spaces and putting our culture at the place and position of reverence and respect. And then also the last section, I'm talking as fast as I can, architects as activists, right? So it's the work, it's the position, it's society, but then also what is our role in this? So I want to introduce you to a few people. The first is Beverly Willis. Beverly Willis is brilliant. She said when she was retiring, she went back to all her past developer clients and said, can you make a commitment to not hire any architecture firm that didn't have a women in the partner or principal level? And so all these developers who were now diverse in their leadership said, yeah, done. And so a lot of architecture firms who were used to getting repeat multi-million-dollar projects from these developers were no longer having access. And when they were told it's because you don't have any women in partner and principal level, guess what they did? They found the women in their office and not just moved them up, but trained them, mentored them, and put them in a position of power. Because honestly, to have those positions come with equity, right? So you can't just have a mascot, if you will. You actually have to give them the power. And so I thought she was brilliant, because instead of going, come on, architects, come on, industry, we could do better, she realized the power of our clients and making us change, and leveraged and pushed upon that. So I want to figure out how I could do that for people of color. I'm still thinking about it, but Beverly Willis, shout out to her and her foundation and the Built by Women exhibitions and all that she does for women in architecture. You have the National Organization of Minority Architects, NOMA, who is celebrating their 50th year. We literally have been in an organization for the entirety of our existence that's been advocating for justice and equity, diversity, and inclusion in the profession for us. And so if there's a NOMA chapter near you and you want to get involved, please, please, please take advantage, especially since a lot of the programming is now virtual as well. Leveraging my position at AIA New York Board of Directors, I actually helped write the Criminal Justice Facility Statement, along with my very diverse peers in the board, where we put out a statement in September of last year that asked for architects to no longer design unjust, cruel, and harmful spaces of incarceration, to step away from designing and constructing jails, prisons, detention centers, and police stations, and asking us to recommit and actually start to work towards alternatives to imprisonments and restorative justice. So this is me leveraging one of those hats to kind of push our chapter, which is the largest AIA chapter, to do something powerful and important here, to claim our responsibility in the racism and oppression that's built into our built environment, and also take a stance to step away from it. And as proud as I am of AIA New York for making the stance, I'm also actively working to see if I can get AIA National to take a similar stance as well. We have the Project Pipeline camps, the one I was telling you about in the beginning, with all these kids learning about architecture and amazingness. Super dope, really great. Again, lots of virtual camps that are happening nationally. So please participate as volunteers if you can. There's also people like Tiffany Brown with 400 Forward, what I like about her advocacy mantra is that it's not about like thousands and thousands of kids one time, but really creating strong bonds and relationships with some students. Every year she takes on a new cohort, takes into construction sites, lecture series, wood shops, writes their recommendation letter, and creates a strong relationship between the two and kind of pushing them forward. Then we have Design Justice with Brian Lee Jr. out in Louisiana, where he's about community engagement, really leveraging our skill sets as architects, not just to stop at RFPs and RFQs and when it manifests into the built environment, but all of our skill sets that we have to work with society and community leaders to hear what are the issues and try to leverage those tools to help start to solve those things. And then we have Mike Ford, the hip hop architect, who had architecture camp, where he really starts to introduce, again, architecture and design to students. But then he also has them paired with a local musician, a celebrity musician, I might say, to help design a project, as well as create a hip hop song that speaks to how they're going to leverage architecture to solve some of those society issues. So for the one that I worked on in the Bronx, it was pretty dope to hear this song talk about how they're going to use architecture to solve teen pregnancy and drug addiction. And then lastly, we have the See It Loud augmented reality app and camp that I started. Actually, we're supposed to have our new first camp last year. COVID is crazy, y'all. Where we're leveraging the content from all the Say It Loud exhibitions of the built work, where you're able to kind of function similar to a Pokemon Go, if you will, where you see a map and it tells you the projects around you that are designed by women and people of color. You get closer, you get to see the headshots and the names of those designers, and actually be able to create art inspired by those buildings and capture on your device and see it on the building at 1-to-1 scale. So really leveraging technology to create the kind of relationship with people to reimagine and re-envision and actually have a hand in seeing how they could resculpt their society and their community. The three main initiatives for Beyond the Built Environment is See It Loud augmented reality app and camp, which is really for preteens and teens. Say It Loud, which is an exhibition for professionals and students, pausing here for dramatic effect. And then Learn Out Loud children's pop-up book, which is for small kids and children. So really trying to support the full pipeline of the profession and making sure that there's always a moment where you can kind of push back and lean on us, and we'll support you in that way. So I'm ending with my favorite quote from MLK: "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moment of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at the time of challenge and controversy." So many moons ago, I was asked to stand, and I've been standing ever since. And truly, after today, I hope you're inspired to stand with me. Thank you.
Pascal, Mallory, this has just been an incredible day to wrap our seminar series. Pascal, you've been on a blaze this year. So thank you for making time for us. And if I have not been the 100th or 1,000th person to congratulate you on your 2021 Whitney M. Young Award, let me be that. Amazing. And yes, I am wearing the Say It Loud 2020 Georgia t-shirt, of which I'm featured, and you can definitely get on the website for a very modest fee. So totally awesome on behalf of the board and Mallory and Richard and Damon and a host of others. Thank you so much. So excited to have you.
We have a student who wants to come on and ask you a question. So sure, Raya.
Okay, I just want to say, like, this was like the most inspiring day, honestly. Like, I love architecture so much, and just definitely, like, throughout my life, I've just been trying to find a way to, like, incorporate kind of like who I am as an individual into like what I design, and just definitely everything to do with just being an African-American female in this society. I just think it's just so inspiring, everything you've done. I just want to tell you that. And so I guess my question is, just for like aspiring architects who are young, female, and Black, like what would you say, just in general, like just what advice would you give to them? It's just as far as like overcoming these obstacles of like maybe facing like microaggressions or something like that.
Right, I would say a lot of those microaggressions that you're feeling, sometimes not so micro, in school is actually going to have instances that happen to you as a professional, right? And it's not always going to be negative. Like I often talk about this client meeting where I went in and I presented, and like it went through the city agency pretty quickly. They were all very impressed and very happy. And when we came out of the meeting, he was like, "Man, were you amazing? And you're Black, and you're a woman. I don't want your white coworkers to talk anymore. Whenever we speak, I want you to be the one to be the face of this project." Now, he meant this with all of the love and joy and happiness in his heart. But I had to say, listen, my participation and my contribution to this project needs to be beyond my skin color and gender. And it's really hard to manage not being a mascot for people, knowing that architecture is something that I love and that I want to pursue, but really kind of being able to defend that I bring more to the table than just that, right? What I'm trying to break apart is that just being seen by that. But to your question, I would say more specifically, please note that there's a lot of organizations, institutions, and professionals who are working really hard to provide resources and opportunities for you where those kind of aggressions can be reported, can be dealt with, and actually be moved out of your way as an obstacle, rather than you feeling like you have to handle it alone, right? Part of these kind of events, the ACCI and all the leaders is trying to say to you, yeah, you are not alone. You might feel like you're alone, we might be rare, but there's a community and a coalition who are actively fighting and making this profession as inclusive and is just as humanly possible. And so as we, go through that work, you are going to have to be challenged in your professional and academic career, but please persevere. Please know that the struggle is real, but that there is a community who are there to support you and to advocate for you to do your thing.
So I just wanted to add that, like, I think just before coming to this entire summit, it's like, I wanted to be known as just an architect, and like, I didn't really want people to focus on my race or my gender, but now it's like, I kind of want to be like that Black female architect, because it kind of makes you like differentiate yourself from everyone. It just kind of makes you stand out. So thank you so much for inspiring me.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. The goal isn't to make you feel that that's all that you are, but that right. To know that you are being seen through those lenses and to claim it, right? That it's not a negative, right? That's part of your uniqueness, and part of the values and the ethos is that you're going to sculpt and how you're going to change the built environment. So yes, would love to see, your career continue to flourish, and can't wait to see you in boardrooms and policies and in architecture firms crushing it in the very near future. Thank you again.
To piggyback on that, Pascal, a question in the chat is, who do you go for inspiration? Where do you look and find that inspiration and mentorship?
So I must say, NOMA is all of who I am. And I often make sure that I make the point to say, with all these lectures and requests for me to come keynote here and there, NOMA National was the first conference that said yes to me speaking, right? They gave me the platform and the podium and the voice to do that. They also attended and gave me comments and critiques to sculpt me to be a better speaker. And they made me who I am. And so it kind of formed me with the skill set that I needed, that when I walked into rooms that were not as friendly, right, not as supportive, that I could hold my own. And I often talk about that to say that really it's about the community that you're building, right? Because that community, whether that's your family, whether that's, your loved ones or whatever, you need to create a whole coalition. It's not just about one person. I also have an absorbent amount of mentors. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have a mentor for every aspect of life. I have a relationship mentor. I have a finance mentor. I have architecture, public speaking mentor, awards mentor, because all of us have things that we're really talented and strong at, and others that we're not so much. And so instead of looking for a perfect person that embodies everything, I try to find components that I want to build within myself and who I see flourishing in that capacity, and attaching myself to them as possible and ask them for help. But really, my support system is as close as my kid and my husband, to my family, to NOMA, as well as other mentors that I've identified and cultivated and curated throughout my career as well. And of God.
Oscar has been patiently waiting with his hand up for like 5 minutes.
Hey, Oscar, I'm long-winded.
Pascal,
Hi,
I'm just sort of vibrating within myself and my spirit, hearing you and your presentation. It's just so wonderful, wonderful. I am so proud of you, and I know you're going to do great things. And I'd like to say congratulations on all the awards and all of that. And your vibration that comes off of you is just fantastic. So it's going to be a wonderful thing in the future, having you as the head person of all these organizations. So I just want you to know that we really appreciate you and thank you so very much for coming on to this program with the ACCI. We're truly, truly blessed.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Oscar, for your generous words. And I really hope.
Oh, there I am.
And I really hope that you all, are inspired to submit so that I can continue to elevate your great work and all that you're doing as well. It's really, really just humbling to see the awards and recognitions. And my husband says, isn't it kind of cool that all these awards you're getting is because you're elevating other people? Like, I was like, yeah, the root of my work really is about others. And to have that heralded will hopefully break apart this kind of competitive nature that's like, oh, it's just about me. It's like, no, if we can pull us forward, that will serve all of us in the long term. So thank you, Oscar, so much for your generous words. I really appreciate it.
And there was, I think, one more question about, as a minority, as a female, what should students be looking for in the firms when they go to work for them? And also on the flip side, I know we have a couple of professionals. Is there anything, as professionals or as firm owners that we can do to be more inclusive and diverse?
Okay, so for the students who are graduating, who's looking for feedback in terms of how do they pick their, their firm, I think it's important that you start making your top 10 architecture firm list of firms that you respect and love their work, but then also their ethos, that their leadership is diverse, that is reflective of you, that you see that there's a path for you. Really start to get engaged with those people who are members there by connecting with them on LinkedIn, or just really being part of those 10 firms as much as possible. I say this because it's incredibly important, especially your first job out of graduation, really starts to set the tone of the type of experiences you have. And depending on the experiences you have, helps to guide the kind of opportunities you have later. And also to understand, when you graduate and you enter a firm, they are not doing you a favor by offering you a job. It is a mutual exchange of awesomeness. They are giving an opportunity and a career path on one hand, and you are bringing the latest and greatest set of skills, technology, speed, and energy. And so do not feel the need to compromise your values when looking for employment. And I know that's tough to say when the economy's down, but I really want you all to be strategic and be mindful and to know of all these different organizations and institutions that have programs that are outlined there just for the point of getting you a space in a firm that will allow you to flourish and really allow your career to expand. And then for professionals who's looking for their offices to be more diverse, I would say that we talk about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, but it's not a series of acronyms. It's actually an equation. Justice plus equity will yield diversity and inclusion. And so if you're looking to diversify your firms or your organizations, you really need to address the justice and equity issues that are plaguing your platforms, right? I can make a room and fill it with 100 Black architects, but if they're not having the same access to promotions, they're not getting paid the same, if the women don't have the right policies that they need for their support when they come back from maternity leave, then all that stuff is not going to maintain, right? So we need to identify how to find justice and equity in your institution, and that's what's going to yield for you to get more diversity and inclusion into your company. And also, this is a very complex, well-integrated system of oppression that's integrated into all aspects of our profession and our field. And so really the way to make it as strategic as possible is to ask your community, right? To be local to those who work for you, who worked for you in the past. What are the challenges that they see? What are the things that they need? And use that as a tool to facilitate the creation of your more equitable and just firms and businesses. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you. And I think we're just right on time. So perfect. I mean, thank you so much, Pascal. That was incredible. That was great.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll let you know how it goes with Lego.